Video on replacing the master brake cylinder on this 1978 Corvette. I bought this Corvette off my daughter. I love this car very much. Everything about this car is great. It's had some problems with the braking system. It had 3 brake calipers that were leaking, so I've replaced all 4 of the brake calipers, but the brakes still feel a little splashy. Feels like with the brake pedal you're stepping on a balloon. Has very little braking power. As you can see, this master cylinder is probably the original one. It does leak a little bit. I did look underneath there and it leaks, so this still needs replaced. And I do want to give a shout out to my wife for buying me these wonderful magnetic lights. I thought when she came up with the idea of buying me this, I thought, yeah, I might use them from time to time. Actually, I can't imagine doing a project without them. It's they just stick wherever you need them. And anyway, the great lights. So the first thing we're going to want to do is drain this master cylinder, and so that is what we're going to do next. When we drain this master cylinder, let me tell you, be very careful with this stuff. It is corrosive. It can damage your skin. And I just used a screwdriver to pop these brackets off. This can damage your skin. It can get in your eye. It can damage your eye, and it can damage your paint. So this stuff is very corrosive. Handle it with care. And we're going to drain this with a turkey baster and put it into a container. And don't reuse your old oil. Maybe take it to an oil changing place or something and see if they can take care of that for you. But again, don't get it on your skin, don't get it on your paint, certainly don't get it on your eye. Wear some eye protection and be very careful with it. Again, this stuff is very corrosive. Don't touch it. Don't get it on your skin. Don't get it on your car. Certainly wear eye protection. Be very, very careful with this stuff. Okay, now that I have that bit of unpleasantness out of the way, we need to disconnect. I'm going to disconnect the front brake line and then the rear brake line. So this reservoir is for the front, this is for the back. Once these two are disconnected, we need to disconnect it from your booster, which is held on with 2 bolts. There's one, and the second is right there. So we need to disconnect these 4, the brake lines, and then disconnect it from the booster. And that is a 14 millimeter wrench. These bolts are really tight. To break them loose, you definitely want to be using a flare nut wrench, or I used to call them a line wrench, but I guess they're called flare nut. As you can see, they're going to grab the bolt, or the nut, I'm sorry, a lot better than just this 2-sided wrench. You're going to have to, they're on there pretty tight, so you're going to have to really get a hold of that and break these loose. Let's see here. It's a little tricky. There we go. Those are on there pretty tight. Okay, that was broke loose. And this flare nut allows me to grab that a lot better than just the 2-sided wrench there. Okay. Oops, there we go. There. Okay, there's that. And now I'm going to loosen up this here, holding on to this. Get a hold of it here. now that I have the wrench on there, I can break it loose. There we go. Okay. And now the other one, I'm going to get on there and break that loose. There it is. All right. Okay, they're on there pretty tight. And there we go. Okay. Now that everything is broke loose, one problem with these flare nut or line wrenches is they don't allow much placement. They're not as mobile. So now you can switch over to your regular wrench and finish disconnecting your two brake lines, and then disconnecting your master cylinder from the booster. And that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, now that I have everything disconnected, I am going to pull the master cylinder straight out of there. Just like that. And I have all the fluid drained out already. And so, as you can see, there's the two bolts that are holding it to the brake booster. And then there's your front brake line and your back brake line, which I'll reconnect to the new master cylinder. Okay, so it's been a few days, but I did get my new master cylinder in, and there it is. And it did come with a bleeding kit, a bench bleed kit. Recommend that you bench bleed it before you install it. And so that's what we're going to do. Basically, you see those two holes there, line up with your brake booster, and then your brake lines go in here and here, but we're going to bench bleed it first. That's what I'm going to do next. And it's a Duralast, and there's the part number if anybody else has a 1978 or C3 Corvette like mine. And so there you go. So now we're going to bench bleed this. So I've decided to bench bleed it in the car in place, and the process is still the same either way. When you bench bleed it, what I would do if I was bench bleeded is mount this master cylinder in a vise, and then do the same thing, connect these two hoses and then back into the reservoir. And then I would take a screwdriver and push in on this plunger back here, which is actually the back of the master cylinder, and I would use a screwdriver instead of my thumb on the bench. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mount it, and then this here, I'm just going to push on the brake pedal, and this will come out and push in on that plunger. So I'm going to mount this back to the car, and I want to show you a trick on the mounting it back on what I do, and then I'm going to go ahead and bench bleed it with my hoses in place. Okay, so now I've got the master cylinder back on, and its two bolts are holding it nice and tight. I've got where normally the front brake line would go, I've got the bleeder kit, the hose plugged in there instead, and the back brakes, same thing. I've got the plastic line in there instead of the actual brake line, which is just hanging loosely right here. So, and these lines go back into the reservoir. So next I'm going to fill up the reservoir, and I'm going to pump the brakes until the air comes out of the line. If you leave air in your line, your brakes will feel like you're stepping on a sponge or a balloon or something. And so, because air will compress, but liquid does not. And so that's the problem with your brake pedal. You want to get all that air out of there. So I'm going to fill up this reservoir and pump the brakes a few times until basically the fluid goes through these pipes and then back into the reservoir. And then once that happens, then I'll be ready to attach the the proper brake lines. So the trick I wanted to show you that you might need about tightening or even breaking loose your old master cylinder or tightening up the new one is sometimes that little wrench isn't enough. So I have a oversized cheater bar, and what I do is just slide it over the wrench so that I can get some pretty serious leverage. And it looks kind of silly, but it works very well. It works so well that I've even stamped the heads off of bolts before. So you have to be careful with it. But I just give it just a little bit of a quarter turn is what I personally did. After I couldn't tighten anymore with the small wrench, that I slid my cheater bar over it and just gave it just a snug more. Okay, so now we're going to, I have my lovely assistant in the driver's seat, and she is going to push on the brake. And as you can see, the air is coming through the bubbles. And that's what we want to do. We want to get that air out of line. If you see that, see all those air bubbles in there? That's what we're trying to get rid of. And so she's going to keep pumping on that brake a few more times. And so go ahead and let go of the brake, and then you'll see that. And then now go ahead and push the brake back in again. Yeah, you see that? We're getting all that air out of there. So go ahead and let go of the brake, and then push it back in. We're going to keep doing this until it's nothing but fluid. And you see the, okay, so let's stop there because you see the fluid level is going down quite a bit because it's just getting all that air out of there. So I'm going to fill this back up a little bit and get back to it here. Okay, so I've got it topped back off, and then we're going to go ahead and pump the brake a couple more times. Okay, you can go ahead and let go, and then pump it again. And now you can see there's a lot less air bubbles, and we're really getting that air out of the line. You can see all that. So we're going to get this to where it just stops sucking air and has nothing but fluid. That's the idea. It may take a few times, and we're very, very nearly there. Okay, so go ahead and hit the brake a couple more times. Okay, looks like we've got all the air out. So, yep, looks like we've got it. So, okay, that's probably good on the brakes. Thank you to my lovely assistant. So what I'm going to do now is one at a time, I'm going to remove this. It's going to be a little bit of a messy process, so I'll probably put my gloves on here, and I'm going to remove this. I'm quickly going to put the front brake in, and I'm going to screw that nice and taut, and then I'm going to do the same thing with this back. I'm going to, after the front's done, I'm going to remove this and put this in back in there as well. So, and then this master cylinder will be bled, and I'll check with you as soon as that is done. Okay, so I'm going to slide out the bleeder hose, bring in the real front line. There we go, just like that. Okay, this hose is wanting to leak all over the place, so I do have something down there to catch all that, so I'm just going to drop that, get this put in. So I'm going to hurry up and get it pretty tight. And now I'm going to switch over to my line wrench. Slide that over there. That allows me to get that nice and tight. Okay, so that's it for the front. And next I'm going to do the same process for the back. Okay, so I've now got both these lines back in, and I've got them tight with my line wrench, and they're as tight can be. So I'm ready to put the lid back on, and it's back up to the fluid level where it's supposed to be. So now I'm going to put this lid back on, and that is it for the master brake cylinder. It's back good to go.
I am going to bleed the calipers next, but that's a whole other thing. But this is just for your brake cylinder. So thank you so much, and have a great day.